It's Jason Gorber from thatshelf.com. I'm speaking with Jac Schaeffer. Congratulations on your show.
Thank you. Oh my gosh, I'm going to have a really hard time listening to your questions because all I want to do is look at your
Thanks, Shelf. I mean, this is the whole thing about that shelf is it's all the stuff that we collect and sort of display prominently. So there we go. We'll start with that shelf question. What do you collect? What are the nonsense things that you get to do when you have a Marvel show that you're like, I want to put this on my shelf?
Oh my gosh, what do I collect? I don't, it's a terrible answer, but I don't collect much because I have children. And so my goal is to get crap out of my house, like always. But I like little mementos and props, I think, more than anything else, like little keepsakes from production. I think that's probably my favorite thing. And then my husband also does screen accurate, like prop replicas.
Oh my God.
We have a saber with a crystal in it that he made, and we have the Raiders, what's it called, with the crystal that he goes to Marion to get. We've got one of those.
So he actually has a thing that Tote burns on his hand. Yeah, oh my God, I'm so jealous. I'm having a moment right now.
Got the diary from Last Crusade. I've got a never-ending storybook. That was pretty good.
That's pretty awesome.
So I'm like, oh, let's look at me. I'm like, I don't collect, except I have never-ending story. And
so, except I married somebody that builds authentic prop replicas from Ray's Lost Ark.
That's it. And it's like right now wearing the Indiana Jones hat at home. So
there you go. So your nerd cred comes in quite well when we come to something like Marvel. If you could talk about getting the tone of this right, because you are navigating something extremely difficult, which is obviously comedy and horror and all of those elements, bringing in the tension, but still doing it in a way that maybe audiences aren't quite prepared for. How big of a job has this been?
It's been kind of the majority of the job. And I love that you said, how did I get it right? Because that implies I did it right. And I still
well, we're only 3 in. I don't know yet.
I mean, I think that Kevin was really up for what he called playing chicken with the audience. Like he was like, how long can we keep, black and white going? Like how entrenched in the sitcom world can we get? And I was like, all of it, like, let's do all of it. Because my theory was, I was really interested in sort of the subconscious level of it, that when you watch a sitcom, you know what you're going to get. And that's why you're there. That's why you're watching it, is because you know it will end happily. And the idea of like, if we dig all the way into that and then we don't do that, what will that do? What will that do for the sort of the conscious viewership? But what will that do like inside? Like the reactions to the end of episode 3 and people talking about, full body chills and like their eyes bugging out and like, or people standing up and like that there's nothing more satisfying to me as a storyteller that it had that sort of like physical reaction to people. So that to me is the answer to the question of tone, is like, it was really about pacing, and it's about like, how long can we wait until we sort of like a little bit pull the rug out, not the whole rug, just a little bit at a time. And that was sort of the great joy for me on this particular project.
The references to sitcoms, I think, are a little bit over. It's the Dick Van Dykes of this world, the Bewitched, all of that stuff. I'm wondering if you could talk about sort of references that might be sort of under the curtain. I think of something like Stepford Wives, that sort of weird sense of normalcy. David Lynch maybe is a reference, but I'm going to throw out one here, the Brady movie, which actually is the reason I became a film critic, which I believe is a masterpiece. This 90s postmodern sense of what is it like to treat reality colliding with sitcom reality. I'm wondering if that had any influence on you whatsoever.
Yes, we watched it in the writer's room. Absolutely. That's amazing. A very good spot. You're totally right. A lot of, looking at that movie to me was about rules of the world, right? Because what they did with that movie was they made the decision that it's happening present day, but that the Brady Bunch is existing in their little bubble, right? That's so clear. It's really like the audience digests it immediately. And then all the comedy is derived from that conceit. It's so clever. And so absolutely, that was a big influence. And that's the type of storytelling that we were after, is like clarity for us, clarity of the rules of the world. And then we were able to sort of then layer it in so that it holds water once you know the full picture.
And outside the sort of main sort of comic book references and the sitcom references, were there things like suspense or horror films the 60s and 70s were filled with these films that, or TV projects that made you feel sort of artificially happy or really leaned into the dread. I'm wondering if you could talk about navigating all of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's been really a pleasure to like have people like call out the like psychological horror of it, because I never really used those words. I think because I was developing something for Disney Plus and I wasn't going to be like, hey, here's my pitch for the, Rosemary's Baby version of the story. I'm not going to get the job that way. But I love being surprised. I love the like WTF moments. And, I really look forward to being on the other side of this and having more candid conversations about, what a lot of my big influences are. I try not to talk about the contemporary influences because I don't want to sort of lead anyone in the wrong direction.
Right.
But I mean, the Brady Bunch movie is a really interesting example because it is quite daring, like, and I think the casual glance makes you think it's just a comedy, but there's a lot of work in there. And we were, that's what we were trying to do. So yeah.
On a personal level, this hardens me. Literally, I've spent 3 decades being a film critic because I saw that film and thought, people are not going to take this seriously. Here's something they're going to dismiss, but there's actually a lot going on. And I think at its best, that's what you're doing with WandaVision. People will watch it and go, oh, this is weird and funny and goofy, but clearly there's more going on. We have the advantage of knowing that we got baggage. We know we're leading into phase 4, but nonetheless, it's that collision. Now, there must have been times while you were cutting it that you went a little bit too far or that you had to bring it back. Just wondering if we could talk about the real challenge of making sure that you nailed that tone correctly in through episodic, teased without being too overt, that sort of stuff.
Yeah. First of all, that's beautiful. That's so lovely, all of the wonderful things that you're saying. And also, I just think that's really beautiful to hear about when people like what inspired you to do what you do. So I think that's fantastic. But yeah, I mean, in the writing process, there were times when we got a little too crazy and a little too sort of like pleased with ourselves.
Right.
I think that happens sometimes.
That happens all the time.
We're so smart. So I think it was about sort of shaving things away. Mm-hmm. And it was about the sort of like faith that I remember like the day that I thought of Mr. Hart choking, like I remember that exact instant, because the reason it popped in my mind was I was like, is it possible to make that moment of a man choking feel like as big a deal as Thanos snapping or whatever? Like, I'm like, can we actually play with stakes in this way? And it was so fun to do that, and it really ultimately came down to having restraint so much of the time.
And if you could talk about casting this remarkable sort of retinue that you've surrounded our 2 leads with, including veterans of filmmakers like the Coen brothers, also people who tonally do all kinds of these amazing shifts, bringing this sort of team together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, so that, obviously I inherited a number of wonderful actors, and got just so lucky. And then, we cast Catherine, and it was one of those things where it's like in my mind, I'm like, oh, like a Catherine Hahn type. And then we got Catherine Hahn, and I was like, are you
you're like, wait a minute, I work for Disney, we can get them.
I know. Well, there's always a lot of that at Disney. You're like, my indie brain is like, oh, it all has to take place in the same diner, and I'm like, oh, or we could just smash the diner with an asteroid. But yeah, so she that was incredible, and then she's perfection and can do anything, which is what what this show is, everything. And then Tiana is such an extraordinary talent and such a bright light, and was so perfect for this role. And then I feel we got so lucky with a lot of the supporting players. The people who are the townspeople in Westview, the neighbors, I mean, in Westview, that all of those actors just have such like facility with the tone and with the vibe of the show, and they're great.
Well, I'll say this on behalf, I don't know if you've seen this from Disney Canada. They did a TV guide, and I happened to write the article on the inside of it. So congratulations on this. You have something else to put on your shelf.
Oh
So
my
we'll
God,
hook you up.
that's amazing. Thank you.
There you go. Thank you so much for your time. Congratulations on the show. And
Thank
congratulations on the transition. I think it's a really interesting shift, and we really look forward to what you have in the future within this universe and whatever universes you wish to bring us on screen.
Thank you.